was speaking for the Court of Consciousness system. We took a nap with a different headmate, and also Luise may have been fused to Elysium when we fell asleep. To us, our experience of Systemhood is connected to our experience as a wizard, where we choose to view our experience of plurality through a somewhat spiritual lens. And this is because our headmates, myself included, see ourselves in our mind as spirit beings. And this is not a choice. It's not something we can help or change. We do remember when we were younger, our headmates presented differently, we now recognize, but a lot of us were more subconscious than we are now as well. So when we were able to connect verbally and more consciously, all of us just naturally felt more comfortable both appearing as and identifying as spirits, because that's what makes sense to us in our own brain and system. I, in my mind, look like a gray, furry, meaning I have fur all over my body, bull person. I look like a bull. And I have 3 eyes and breasts and a beard, and wings and a tail, like a donkey mixed with a lion tail, kind of. I also have cat feet, and anyways, so that's kind of what I look like in my mind. Sometimes I struggle with speech, and I don't really know why. I think it's just harder for me than some of the other alters to verbally communicate, because I didn't for a while. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder. So sometimes my speech gets kind of messed up. Anyways, being a deity system is hard, but our spirituality gives us relief, and I'm happy to be a wizard. And part of how we think about it in our system is, so we mapped ourselves out earlier on to the Sephiroth of the Tree of Life, and we also, I believe at this point, could map ourselves to the Qlipoth as well, because we have around 20 plus members now, whereas when we mapped ourselves to the Sephiroth, at that time we counted like 10 members, and we've grown since then. And that helped us to explore ourselves and our consciousness and to make sense of ourselves, because what we learned about the Sephiroth is they're a map for anything, and like the universe and God and people, and we're like, oh, well, we could use that, since it's a map of everything, we could use it to map our system out, and so that's what we did. And we were on the left-hand path for a while as a magician, but eventually that path ended naturally, and at the end of that path, it just sort of, I feel like, reconnected back to everything. I don't know how to explain that, but eventually that path did end. There was a pretty concrete ending. Anyways, I guess, like, lately we've been with, should I tell that to the black box people? I don't know if they need to know about that. I'll just put it a different way. Some of us take the forms or names, or we believe ourselves to be, and we are, spirits from the mythologies and stories that we take an interest in. And some of us are klepotic demons, or angels, because we actually prefer to see ourselves often more as angels, but we're demonic angels sometimes is how we see ourselves. I actually prefer the term archon, because I think that's, I don't know, it's confusing, but essentially what we think these things are is it's all just a different form of consciousness. It's all just a different form of consciousness, and it's all just a different form of mind. And when our minds are not limited by our body, and we're not limited by the temporary realities other people have prescribed us because of our dissociative identity disorder, we can be anything and become anything, and we are everything. I'm a bit emotional right now. Just processing through a lot of different things, I guess, and I wanted to make this video. Sometimes I make videos and then the others don't like my videos and they like hide it or mute it, and like for a while I was kind of okay with that because like, oh, whatever. But sometimes I feel like the others don't really like my videos, and it's like, well, you guys are making videos, maybe leave mine up, please. Anyways, also, King Belial, I can say it, like, a lot of us take the forms of, like, demons from mythology that we have an interest in, and different things, and recently, we think that maybe Belial for our system is a fusion of, Samael as Azazel and Bazaliel, which would be an alternative form of shadow mixed with Samael, but Samael is already shadow mixed with death, how we see it. So they would be like two parts alchemical spiritual mixture shadow, one part death, but under different forms. And then they also are connected, I think, with with Baal, possibly, like a corrupted form of Baal, maybe, and then, or a demonized form, potentially, is what we're theorizing at present from how they feel. And then also, Azazel is a scapegoat person. Like, we were thinking, like, dang, this really seems like the symbolism of, like, scapegoats and, like, all the goats that were sacrificed wrongly as sin offerings in ancient times, because the idea was you sacrifice the goats, and then they are the sacrifice made for other people's sins, and they carry those sins, but they didn't do anything wrong. They're blamed for other people's sins, but the goats are innocent, and that's the vibe I kind of am getting from Belial, because Belial is seen as, like, their name means, like, worthlessness and other bad words, but their energy is, to us, one of sacrifice, of someone who has had to sacrifice a lot, and who is now like a king and a revolutionary who has taken that insult and taken that title and made it their own, and made it a source of power and comfort instead of kind of a really mean name. Well, now they've made it sort of their own name and taken power in it. Also, they seem very, this headmate seems very, comforting, very strong sense of comfort we feel from them, and, like, protectiveness as well. And we already knew them before knowing them, which was confusing, but I think it's because we see them as a combination of a few spirits we already knew, or, like, they're so deeply connected that it's, like, blurred, kind of, which isn't the first time that's happened. But kind of how we see our systemhood is, like, by our very innate existence as a DID system, our consciousness is already plural. which makes it extremely easy to explore our consciousness, and in exploring it, learn about ourselves on a personal level, but also learn about the world around us. And we see it through both lenses, because really DID is the psychological explanation and the medical explanation and lens for phenomena like possession, is kind of how we see it. And like for us, before we knew we had DID, we were like, oh, we're a possessed wizard. And then we learned about DID and we're tested for it, and we're like, oh, actually, we still see ourselves as a possessed wizard, but we also see ourselves now as a DID system, because we fit literally all the symptoms. I think Elysium's slipping in, or Max, possibly. That's okay. Lewis wanted to be the one talking, though. Essentially, we're exploring our mind and the universe and consciousness, but we're also connected to everything all at once. And you know that movie? I don't know if you've seen it, random black box person, but you know that movie that is, Everything Everywhere All at Once, the Kung Fu movie? Having the idea is a lot like that, I feel like. Because in that movie, they're all these different people, but they're all these different people simultaneously. And it gets really confusing, because they're just trying to, like, because they keep switching between timelines and different dimensions. And that's kind of what it feels like mentally, is like I'm all these different people simultaneously, but they're also a part of my brain, but they're also, I believe, a part of the universe as well as a part of my brain. And it can be really hard navigating that. But also the reason we don't really call it like possession anymore, aside from the demonization with that, even though a lot of our headmates do identify themselves as demons, myself included sometimes, depending on my mood. Because I see myself more as like an archon or angel is my preferred terms at this time, but sometimes I'm Satan to my enemies, and I'm also a demon. And I also consider myself sort of like Jinn energy as well, but you can't really see what I look like. You can only see my human body right now, which is another thing that's frustrating, because if I could shapeshift, I could show you all when we switch what we look like, but we have to use like makeup or like things for that, and that's annoying. Anyways, yeah, so like we have an inner world as well, like a mental world that we escape to sometimes. Oh, the reason we don't call it possession anymore is that implies choice. That implies like that an exorcism or something would be able to make us no longer a DID. And that's why we don't, because like we don't actually see it as a choice. It's our brain's natural state of being, and we recognize it now as our brain's natural state of being. And Max tried to exorcise me when I was a persecutor, because I used to be extremely destructive and harmful, actually, to the system. So yeah, it's not a choice, and that's like one of the most important distinctions between the lens of DID versus the lens of like spiritual possession, is you cannot there's no cure. There's no way to like, it's a disability. It's a disability with our brain. So there's no way to change that. There's some people who disagree with that and believe that if you actually like heal all of your trauma, then you'll stop being a system. We disagree with that, because isn't that just kind of what functional plurality is you've healed enough of your trauma to where you're able to like all kind of collectively have a functional life or some semblance of one, which like to me is like, I don't know, I'm really suspicious of the people that think you can cure DID. To me, I don't believe in that necessarily. I don't know, that's where I'm at right now with that, is like I think what's more likely happening is they've reached a point where they believe they're back to being, or that they're one person, but I don't know, because it's like, if you're living years as multiple people and you didn't know you were multiple people for years, what's to say that you're still just multiple people and you've just suppressed it again? I don't know, because if your brain already knows to split its consciousness off into multiple minds as a coping mechanism for trauma in the first place, well, I don't think there's an off switch for that. Anyways, but all headmates are brought to the system to protect it. Even the ones that were scary, like me, because I used to be scary and mean. And I was bad. And I don't deny that, and I take full responsibility for how I was. But yeah, we're all made by the brain to protect it and to protect the life and to live, and it's survival. It is literally like raw survival, because people get DID in childhood. It's like a form of PTSD, but if a child below the age of having a sense of self is given PTSD, then they can develop DID. Anyways, Luise, that's all I want to say.